Yo, what's poppin'? We have the next match up in my preview series for the Kickoff Clash Week 1, going to the third seed LA Gladiators um, against the fifth seed, the Houston Outlaws. Their choices between Houston and Atlanta, and they picked Houston. That's really all there is to say here. So, Gladiators 4-2 with a +7 map differential. Houston Outlaws 4-2 with a +5 map differential. So it should be a very close match on paper, right? Looking at the records. Well, not quite. Maybe not all the losses are weighed equally. So maybe they are weighed equally. That's interesting. That's something to look at. Anyway, so LA Gladiators, their schedule 3-1 against New York, 3-1 against Boston the first week. Then they lose 3-2 to the Dallas Fuel in a crushing reverse sweep by Dallas. And then the next week, they lose 3-2 to the San Francisco Shock in a crushing reverse sweep again for the Shock. And then they beat London 3-1, and then they beat Atlanta Reign 3-0. So there are only two losses coming off of reverse sweeps from seed 1 and 2 in the region. In very close games, you could argue Gladiators should have won them. Maybe they should have found a way to close it out. But they couldn't. And even if they had, I don't think they. If they beat Dallas, they leapfrog them. But even if they beat Shock, I think Shock has much better map differential. So they could have been second seed maybe. But very close matches. They went the distance. Gladiators couldn't find a way to close it out. Hopefully, they find a way to be a little more clutch this next weekend. Moving on to the Houston Outlaws schedule, they 3-0 Dallas in the first week on stage in San Antonio. They lose to the Defiant 3-2 the next week. They lose to the Shock 3-1. They beat the Florida Mayhem 3-2. They beat London Spitfire 3-0. And then they beat the Paris Eternal 3-2 in a 5-map banger. In that last series, they were playing the Zarya composition, which they did not look great on, and they seem to be. That's the first time we saw them swap over from the Doomfist. We'll see if they continue to try and work Zarya into their team strategies moving forward. But in the interest of placing as high as you can in this tournament, it would be wise to maybe not play the Zarya. But we'll see if they value making themselves better in the future, maybe, or trying to do as much as they can in this tournament. Anyway, Gladiators going back over, playing Skewed, Ons, Kevster, Patafon, Funny Astro, Shoe, Space, and Reiner, all of them getting playtime. The main roster is Reiner, Kevster, Patafan, Funny Astro, and Shoe. But Skewed comes in on like Circuit Royale, Ons comes in on like your Widowmaker map, Circuit Royale, and Watch Punch Gibraltar maybe. And Space also comes in on Circuit. But other than that, they're sticking mostly to the monkey dive. We did against Atlanta see the rush come out. It's not known if that was sort of strategic warfare against Atlanta, seeing as they couldn't beat London, or if they actually planned on trying to incorporate that rush as a possible option for them in the future. I can definitely see it, but I don't think we'll see it in this matchup. Houston kind of rolled London playing the Doomfist, and London probably still the best rush team. I would say the London rush looked better than the Gladiators rush against Atlanta personally, but that's not a here nor there right now. I kind of think they'll just play the monkey the whole time. Maybe into the next round they'll play the rush again, but for this series I would probably expect them not to. Going back over the Houston roster, they've been pretty solid this whole time. With Dante, Iris, Pelican, Lastro, Piggy, Merritt. Their only possible swap is Dante and Piggy. Piggy only seeing playtime on the Sigma on Circuit Royale, or recently on the Zarya composition against Paris. But again, I don't know if we'll see it. They look much stronger on the Doomfist comp. They look like they can take maps off of teams much more likely with the Doomfist comp. Yeah. I don't think they'll win with it against the Gladiators, at least. But I think it'll be closer than if they play Zarya, as of right now. Uh, Looking at the results from last season, because that's always fun to look at, the Gladiators make it to Hawaii once. Yeah, they make it once in the Countdown Cup against uh, the Chengdu Hunters and win. That was the whole thing. The shoe window flank was crazy, but that's the only time they won. Other than that, pretty mediocre. I would not mediocre. They definitely were better than average. Like they made it to the qualifiers each time, but they only went to Hawaii the one time and won it. And in the playoffs, they lose to the eventual second place Atlanta Reign. So not awful, but you probably might you might have been expecting more if you're the Gladiators. They had a star-studded roster, uh, and it really looked like they should be like ready to compete. Not too many changes, to be honest, but enough changes that they look better, right? So you're looking to improve your the Gladiators, but you're not super upset about last season, right? But you definitely want to try and make a splash here in the kickoff clash. Houston Outlaws last season. That's what this is mediocre, right? They don't even make it into the actual playoffs. They lose to the Washington Justice in the play-ins. Not, it's just not great. They never make it. They make it to the qualifiers of two of the tournaments, but they lose pretty quickly to the Dallas Fuel. Uh, Not a lot to say there. Anyway, my expectations for this is I think Houston will take a map because every team seems to take a map against the Gladiators, except Atlanta. But every team other than that seem to take a map. So I kind of expect that trend to continue. And interesting that both of these teams play the top two seeds, but Houston actually gets their win off it. So maybe if that's not the first match of the season, the Dallas Fuel win. Like Dallas look much stronger than they did in week one, right? It's pretty obvious that they look much stronger. Uh, so realistically, if Dallas was played at the end of this, then you could argue that Houston maybe wouldn't even make the kickoff clash. Or no, they would. They would still, but uh, you know, they're not. They're fifth seed, but maybe that's a little higher than what you might anticipate. Uh, but regardless, I don't know. Not a lot to say. Doomfist comp, hopefully from Houston. Don't want to see any Zarya. Don't want to see the rush in this matchup. Houston seemed to have a pretty good handle on how to play it. Uh, and yeah, should be a 3-1 for the Gladiators. I'll guess could be a 3-0. I'd be kind of surprised if Houston take two maps. To be honest, Gladiators looking very strong. If they win either of their matches against the top two teams, we're not even having there's no possibility of Houston beating them, right? But until they show that they have that clutch factor, that's all it's gonna have to be. It's gonna have to be a solid third place for the Gladiators. So that's for me. Give it a like, give it a subscribe, bro. Uh, and yeah, deuces and have a good one.